Hey guys, this is Shaw from worshipguitarskills.com, and in today's video I want to talk to you about drives and how to use drive when you're playing. Now the kind of drive I used there was a bit more for fun. It's not really the kind of a tone you're going to dial in, to use on every Sunday. However, there are definitely some times when a tone like that can be helpful depending on the kind of song and the style that we are going for. So why do people and guitarists specifically use overdrive pedals? Well, overdrive and, guitar sound is kind of synonymous with each other, and that comes from back in the day when people used tube amps and they were able to really crank those amps and get a lovely saturated kind of tone. That's the kind of tone that if you're a guitarist and you're into some of the classic rock and blues kind of bands and guitar players, that's the kind of tone we all love. And it's obviously found its way into worship music as well, even though it's a slightly different application. That's the reason we want to use that, because we want to mimic those classic amp tones without having to have the classic amps, number one. And number two, sometimes if you have some of those classic valve amps, you really have to crank the amp in order for it to kind of give you that smooth, saturated sound. So let's have a quick look at this pedal board. Over here, I'm going to show you an exotic BB Preamp, and this is an MI Effects, a super crunch box. So these are two very different kind of overdrive pedals. The BB Preamp is going to be more of a kind of a warm overdrive, where the super crunch box, that's definitely more of a higher gain overdrive, even bordering on distortion. And the reason why we use these kind of things is because it kind of just fattens up your tone, number one, like you've heard in the beginning of this video. And I could even switch on the BB Preamp. And without that, with it, so if you're going to play a lead line like this, now if I play that without drive, as you can hear, it just doesn't have the same presence and it wouldn't cut through the mix in the same way. This sounds much better. And then of course, if you're going to go into like a chorus of a song and you want to just fatten up the tone, then you can play some nice full-on power chords. These things just adds a lot of body to your playing. So let's look at this particular pedal. Again, always use the concept that I've taught you in other videos, which is to use your ear when it comes to dialing in the sound you want and not using your eyes, so to speak, because music, we perceive it by listening. So I find it helpful to kind of close my eyes even and just play with the knobs and the controls in order to find that sweet spot from a tonal perspective. So on this exotic pedal over here, we've got a gain, a volume, a treble, and a bass control. So the gain is kind of obvious. If I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to play an A string and I'll put the gain all the way to the left and then I'll morph it to the right and kind of mix between the two of those, and you can hear what that does. So here the gain is all the way to the left. But if I put the gain all the way to the right, it's going to be way more overdriven. So what you want to do with your particular guitar and the pickups, you want to find that sweet spot where the gain, is giving you all the presence, the power, cuts through the mix, but you don't want it to be used too excessively. Now, one thing that I've noticed, if you listen to certain classic rock bands that have a really full-bodied sound, you would think that they use a ton of gain in order to get that, but it's actually using less gain than what you would imagine. So never fall into the trap of like just using too much gain. You always just want to find that sweet spot. So for me, on this BB Preamp, that's kind of in the middle. Now the other controls, the bass and the treble, that allows me to shape the EQ, the equalization of the sound. Because if I'm on a PRS guitar like this with high gain output pickups, it's going to respond, the pedal's going to respond very differently than if I use my Strat with single coil pickups. And that is where if the sound is just a little bit too bright, you can kind of cut some of that mids. And if the sound lacks a bit of body, you can add in some of the bass. So that is what the treble and the bass controls do. And like you heard, you might have noticed when I had the gain all the way to the left and I kicked on the pedal, my volume was actually softer than the tone without the pedal engaged. Well, in that case, you can just use the volume level to bring up your overall volume to kind of match the sound without the pedal engaged. So that is the BB Preamp. Now what I can do is I can actually stack different drive pedals together. Now if we listen to just the crunch box on its own, and let's compare that to the BB Preamp. All right, there's quite a difference in the way that it sounds, but I can actually stack these two pedals together. So if I just have the BB Preamp on, I'm gonna play a little bit, and then I'm gonna add in the actual crunch box and listen to the difference in sound once I stack the second drive pedal on top there. All right, so how do you do that? Well, you have to remember that when you are stacking two drive pedals together, obviously we are adding overdrive, so we're literally overdriving the signal and we're getting distortion, but we want to make sure that it's a natural and a musical sounding overdrive and musical sounding distortion. So you definitely don't want to put both pedals to the max. Again, use your ear, but use those where that when you are kind of using two pedals together, the aggregate sound as a result of that is going to be very different from the fact when you just use one on its own. And so you can kind of think of it like, if you into painting, for example, mixing two different colors together is going to give you a new color that you couldn't find with the way if you didn't mix those two together. And the amount that you might use of two colors, you might use 50% of each, it's going to give you a specific sound, or you might use 75%, 25%. You can play around with the stuff, the way that you're going to shape that sound. The same way for cooking, the kind of spices, and if you start fusing some flavors together, you come up with new flavors. And that is really what it's all about, stacking overdrives. Number one, coming up with some new sounds, but also number two, sometimes we need to be able to kick it up a notch, right? So you might have a song that starts off nice and easy with the verse, and then it builds into the chorus where you might have a drive pedal engaged. And then when you get to the bridge, you want something extra, and then you can kick on a second drive pedal that is just going to, give you more drive and just going to give you a bigger sound. So here's a great tip for you. In addition to using your ear when it comes to tweaking the sounds and coming up with the sounds that you want in your playing, learn how to kind of to create these soundscapes with your pedals, with your guitar, the pickups you use, where you play on the guitar, the way you set up your amp, all these kind of things, because the more adept and the more you can learn to adapt and create different sounds, the more versatile you are going to be as a player. And this is the tip. Whenever you go for different sounds, make sure that it's musical. It sounds good with regards to the rest of the band. It sounds good in the mix, and also that it's inspiring to you to play, because I've seen it so many times where people might have a very expensive pedal board and guitar and amp and all that kind of stuff, but they don't feel comfortable because the pedals and things aren't quite set up the right way, and they're not really sure how it's going to respond when they strike the strings, etc. So what you want to do is learn how your gear works, push it to the limits, go to the extremes, see what things sound like, and then find that sweet spot that you want, so that when you set up your pedal board and your amp, which in a sense, if you think about it, essentially the amp is very loud if you're using a tube amp. The pedals, they're adding distortion and delays and reverbs and all these kind of things. So we're really messing with the sound to a great degree. But you want to make sure that you remain in control with that. So when you play the guitar, you can play with conviction, you can dig into the strings, and you should almost know that, well, if my pedals are set up like that, my amp's like that, I play this guitar, I'm going to strike the guitar like that, I can expect that specific tone to happen or to occur, whatever the case may be. And that's going to allow you to become a better guitar player. Now, talking about becoming a better guitar player, if you want to learn some of the essential worship guitar techniques and worship guitar parts that you're going to need to play in modern worship guitar, I would like to invite you to check out our 7-day worship guitar challenge. It's a fantastic challenge where you get tabbed examples, you get 15 different types of guitar parts, we doubled guitars, and you get a backing track that you can get to jam along with to put those newfound skills to use. And through that process of improving your playing and your skills, you can learn to find your own unique voice on the guitar. So that link is right there in the description box. You can join us for free. I hope you decide to join us today for that 7-day guitar challenge. And I really hope you enjoyed this very quick look into how you can use drive pedals on your pedal board in a modern worship guitar setting. All right, guys, that's it for this one. I look forward to seeing you part of the challenge, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because then you can get notified whenever we release new videos just like this.